Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. I don't know if you've seen the news lately, but there's a couple news stories I want to share with you. There's this one from KSL. Russian government blacklists BYU, making affiliation with the school, quote unquote, dangerous in the country. And then we've also had this recently. This is Salt Lake Tribune. LDS Church suffers setback in China as government shuts down congregations in Beijing and other cities. So this is happening around the same time, and that's a little weird. So let's look into it. I have a suspicion that the adversary is involved, and it may have to do with the temples that have been announced for these two countries. We'll get to that a little bit later. Okay, KSL. On the morning of June 3rd, Brigham Young University history professor Jeffrey Hardy awoke to shocking news. The Russian government had blacklisted his employer. Quote, "I was completely stunned. It seemed to come out of nowhere," he said. He learned from an article in the Moscow Times that BYU had been added to Russia's quote-unquote undesirable list at the end of April, a label that makes involvement with the organization a criminal offense, as per a Russian law passed in 2015. The independent online news publication began as a print magazine in the country in 1992 and was also blacklisted in March 2024. Okay, it seems a little extreme, but continuing. The official list states the decision was made to include BYU on April 29th with an effective date of June 2nd. Many local reports connected the possible reason for the ban to an event the university held called Russia, sorry, this might upset them, Russia as a global threat on February 6th. A date that was mistakenly read by many on the list, but in fact the list refers to the effective date on June 2nd. The event hosted the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Sonata Coulter, who oversees policy toward Russia in Central Europe. Oh, goodness. Later on, Hardy said legal representation with the university would likely be looking at how to possibly be removed from the list, but the prospects of actually achieving that could be slim. Quote, "To my knowledge, no organization has been delisted," Hardy said, noting that if it is possible, he believes it could take a number of years. When asked about a study abroad or foreign exchange programs, Hardy said all such programs have been on hold since the COVID-19 pandemic. So it looks like that's going to be on hold for a little bit longer, but there's no one doing that right now. And then continuing, but the school does have enrolled students from Russia. Quote, "That's probably the number one concern at this point. I don't have the data on how many students we currently enroll from Russia, but I know that we do have some, and that's going to certainly affect their enrollment or their possibility to return to Russia without fear of prosecution." I mean, this sounds like something from the Soviet Union in the Cold War, but even now, I mean, Russia has changed. It's changed over the years, but it still has some of these ways of thinking. It's definitely not the United States. I would hope that maybe these students would be grandfathered in. They didn't know this was going to happen. But anyway, everyone say prayers for these students that they'll be able to go back to their home and not go to jail or be fined or something like that. All right, continuing, Hardy estimated that it would be dangerous for any enrolled student to come to BYU and then return through border control back to Russia. Quote, "I mean, they can't come here, almost certainly, or if they do come here, it would signify cutting up ties with Russia." Okay. I want to point out, in President Nelson's first general conference as president of the church, the final talk of that conference was called "Let Us All Press On." And in that talk, he said, or he announced the temple It says right here, in a major city yet to be determined in Russia. I don't know about you, but when I heard that, I was shocked. I mean, by this point, 2018, the Soviet Union had been gone for a while, but it was still shocking to hear a temple announced for Russia. And at this point in 2025, 2018 just feels so long ago, but I remember it being announced, and then this idea of a Russian temple just kind of faded in the background. I think about it every now and again, but it still hasn't materialized. I wonder if it wasn't for the war with Ukraine, I wonder if maybe they would have started on it by now. But even by 2022, you would think that they'd have a rendering. Maybe they would have started construction by then. Maybe there's other complications that I don't know, but this whole thing with BYU, I'm sure that this isn't going to help. So you have possible previous complications, and then you have the Ukraine war that probably made it even harder. And now they've blacklisted BYU. So what does that mean for the temple? I don't know. Okay, and then if that wasn't enough, Salt Lake Tribune, LDS Church suffers setback in China as government shuts down congregations in Beijing and other cities. This is by Peggy Fletcher Stack. Published on the 4th of July, the birthday of a country that guarantees freedom of speech and religion. Okay, in recent months, several Chinese municipalities across the giant Asian nation have shut down congregations of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints without warning, citing a failure to register with the government. The closed branches range from Nanjing in the eastern province of Jiangsu to Jilin province in the north. The most recent quote-unquote banning, however, was aimed at the two branches in the capital of Beijing, one for the expatriates and one for Chinese worshippers. On June 22nd, the Civil Affairs Bureau of the Chaoyang district in Beijing announced that, quote, the MORMON Beijing branch carried out activities in the name of social organizations without registration, which violated the provisions of the Regulations on the Administration of Social Organization Registration, end quote. Accordingly, the edict declared, quote, the Beijing branch is hereby banned. That is crazy. Could you imagine being a member of that branch and hearing that? Imagine if your ward was suddenly hereby banned by the local government or the national government. In regards to that, later on in the article, and I can't cover everything that's in this article, so I'll put a link for this in the description box below, but it's worth a read. So in this section called Expats Meeting on Zoom, it says, in the aftermath of the government's moves, the president of the English-speaking branch in Beijing sent an email last week to his congregants saying, quote, we are transitioning to online church meetings via Zoom beginning this Sunday, June 29th. The leasing discussions are underway with the Jintai building management. We plan to meet in this manner until further notice, end quote. Members say the church's signage, subtle though it was, has already been removed. Quote, as a member who has participated in the daily activities of the LDS Beijing branch, I am heartbroken. Ziyang Shen, who now lives in Salt Lake City, wrote in an email to the Salt Lake Tribune. Continuing, the church strictly abides by China's laws and regulations and strictly prohibits members in China from actively preaching and even strictly prohibits Chinese believers from meeting with American believers. These are not just in the laws and regulations, but I have seen them with my own eyes, end quote. So, I mean, is this a sign of things to come in China? When we go to this ABC4 Utah article by MJ Jukes, it says, the ban comes amid recent crackdowns by the Chinese government on foreign religious groups. In March 2025, China's National Religious Affairs Administration issued an order implementing tighter restrictions on many religious groups, according to Chinese state media. The order requires foreign religious organizers to, quote, have no hostile words or deeds against China, have no negative records, end quote. Groups are now required to provide city officials with a number of details of the religion's activities, including, quote, time arrangement, activity methods, number of activities, number of participants, security measures, etc. The order states. Oh my gosh. It's so cringy. Communism, it's so amazing. Can you imagine that being part of your ward council, or as you're meeting with your counselors for whatever, you're planning an activity and you have to make sure to report it to the government, what you're doing. Do you have security? How many are going to participate? And then this article at the end notes, on April 5th, 2020, in a stunning announcement, President Russell M. Nelson announced construction of a Latter-day Saint temple in Shanghai, China. However, no groundbreaking date has been released. So just like Russia. Same thing, same story for me. When I heard that there was going to be a Shanghai China temple, I was shocked. It was already shocking that we have the Hong Kong China temple. Even though it's Hong Kong was leased by the British for, I think, 100 years. But even that was shocking. I remember back then. But to have another one, and we haven't seen, like it says here, no groundbreaking, no rendering or anything like that. But President Nelson announced a Shanghai China temple. And now we have this going on. And just like Russia, is this going to be further delayed because of what's going on right now? So here's the map on the church website. We for Russia, we still don't even know the city that it's supposed to be in. If I were to guess, I would say St. Petersburg, but what do I know? And then for China, they should have this in, we do know that it's supposed to be in Shanghai, so I don't know why they have the place marker right here, but then they have this one for the Hong Kong China temple. So, and then on top of that, so we're talking about these things, these moves that are not necessarily on the surface related to temples. I'm sure it's, in the government's mind, it's not related to temples, but I think when it comes to the adversary and the moves that he's making and the control that he has on the world and the influence that he has with some of these governments, that's probably on his mind. Because I feel like lately there's been a lot of obstruction when it comes to temples. I mean, there always has been, but it feels like there's been a lot in the news lately. So for example, Salt Lake Tribune, this article is about this big fight over the temple in Texas. I can't remember the name of the temple. I think they changed the name of the temple. If you know, just put it in the comments below. It's not the point of this video. Oh wait, the church initially dubbed it the McKinney, Texas temple, a reference to a much larger neighboring city. But now it's the Fairview? Yeah, hold on, let me see. Gosh, this, Fairview, Texas temple. So anyway, there's been all this like uproar about this temple, and there's been a fight between the church and local residents. And then the same thing, another big uproar over this temple in the Las Vegas area, the Lone Mountain, Nevada temple. So I haven't really covered these too much, but they've been making news. I'm sure that you've already heard about it. And I just want to end with this. Let's go to my spreadsheet called Quotes A through Z. This is currently row 564 for Temple's adversary. So I just want to read a few quotes. This is from Elder George Buchanan, Quorum of the 12 Apostles, Millennial Star, November 12th, 1877, the Logan Temple. He says, "Every foundation stone that is laid for a temple, and every temple completed according to the order the Lord has revealed for his holy priesthood, lessens the power of Satan on the earth." and increases the power of God and godliness, moves the heavens in mighty power in our behalf, invokes and calls down upon us the blessings of the eternal gods and those who reside in their presence. There's no doubt whatever of this in my mind, and those who have engaged in this work today must certainly have felt the spirit and power of it. There has been a holy influence here. Angels have been here. The presence of our Father, too, with all his faithful saints who have stood firm, steadfast, and true while they were here upon the earth, and every person present who has been prepared to receive it has been filled with it. We are engaged in this great work, which will in time result in the complete overthrow of the power of Satan upon the earth. So let me just pause right here. Doesn't it kind of make sense? You have Satan, you have his dominions, you have countries, people that he probably has more sway with, and he's losing ground. As we build more and more temples, he's losing ground. And so it makes sense that he would try to maybe reinforce those areas where he has a stronger hold, like Russia and China, where you have these different forms of government that are generally hostile toward religion. So we are engaged in that great work, which will in time result in the complete overthrow of the power of Satan upon the earth. And all of those evil influences, all of that misrule and oppression, Russia, China, and all the wickedness that now causes earth itself to groan and all of its inhabitants to mourn, we are engaged in the work that will sweep evil from off the face of the earth and establish the reign of peace and of truth and of righteousness, where the honest and the meek and the lowly shall have their rights, and none dare to molest or make them afraid. And then just a couple more. This one's from President Gordon B. Hinckley, at the time, second counselor in the first presidency. In the October 1985 General Conference, the name of the talk is Rejoice in this Great Era of Temple Building. Temple building and the dedication of temples have gone on at such a pace in the last few years that some pay little attention and feel it is of small significance. I'll just wait until 2024, 2025, when now we have 200 temples, over 200 temples. All right, he continues, but the adversary has not been unmindful of it. The building and dedication of these sacred edifices have been accompanied by a surge of opposition from a few enemies of the church, as well as criticism from a few within. This has brought to mind a statement of Brigham Young in 1861 while the Salt Lake Temple was under construction. Evidently, when someone with previous experience was asked to work on the Salt Lake Temple, he responded, "I do not like to do it, for we never began to build the temple without the bells of hell beginning to ring." To which Brigham Young replied, "I want to hear them ring again. All the tribes of hell will be on the move if we uncover the walls of this temple. But what do you think it will amount to? You have all the time seen what it has amounted to." End quote. Yes, in these recent times we have felt much of opposition, but we have also noted the frustration of those who have tried to stop this work. We've been strengthened. We have been moved forward under the promise of the Lord, who said, "I will not suffer that they, the enemy, shall destroy my work. Yea, I will show unto them that my wisdom is greater than the cunning of the devil." So Satan can make his moves and wield the influence and power that he does with Russia, China, and other governments, other people, but it's only going to be for a moment. He's not going to prevail. And so it'll be interesting to see how things play out with Russia, China, and any other place that's hostile toward the church and the building of temples. By the way, I have that full quote right here. It's actually my first quote. These are all in chronological order. The older quotes are to the right. The more recent ones are to the left. But here it is. You can pause and read this if you want to see the whole thing. But I just have one last one that I want to share. This is from President Dallin H. Oaks. This is Newsroom on the church website, April 28th, 2024, an article called President Oaks Dedicates Urdaneta, Philippines Temple. He says, temples strengthen the land in which they are built, and they strengthen the people who enter them to do the work of the Lord, said President Oaks. Okay, so let's just keep an eye on these things. Let's pray for these temples to be built. Let's pray for restrictions on religion to be eased, to be removed, and for the work of the Lord to keep rolling forward. And let's hope that we see the day when the church flourishes in China, in Russia, and other places like the Middle East. Okay, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.